being a couple of minutes late. We need to invest in a better clock, I think. Right. Taking an overview of Abraham's life, we can see how events worked in his favour. Even terrible events like a grievous famine or his wife getting taken, you can see Yehovah's hand in everything. We can see that Yehovah watches over Abraham. What we can't see so clearly most of the time is Yehovah's hand in our lives. And there's a bit of a brief summary of his life. He gets called. God promises his land. Abraham builds an altar, calls upon the name of the Lord, goes to Egypt, lies to the Pharaoh, and Yehovah intercedes to protect Sarah. Then he defeats the king who captured Sodom and took Lot. Then he meets Melchizedek. He promises him a son. He believes that his offspring will number as many as the stars. And we have the birth of Ishmael. And then God promises that Abraham will be the father of many nations. He renames him Abraham. And God confirms the covenant with Abraham. It is carried in his son Isaac. And then Abraham circumcises the males in his house. And then next week JP will be covering the affair with Sodom and Gomorrah. Got Isaac being born. Yehovah tests Abraham and asks him to sacrifice Isaac, which we just looked at. He tells him, in thy seed all of the nations of the earth will be blessed. And Sarah dies, and Abraham buries her in the part of land he has to buy. Abraham seeks a wife for his son, and he dies at 175 years old. But you look at his life, and you see all the events in his life, and you think, wow, this is incredible. The Lord was with him in every single step of the way. We read it earlier. The steadfast love of Yehovah is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him, and his righteousness unto children's children. To such as keep his covenants, and to them that remember to his commandments to do them. As Yehovah has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all. He is sovereign over everything. As Abraham's seed, we know that it is he who watches over us. Abraham's life gives us a demonstration of what it is to Shema, to hear the words of God. We also see how things go wrong when we lean on our own understanding. We look to the union with Hagar to acquire an heir. It just reminds me of this scripture, trust in Yehovah with all your heart, do not lean on your own understanding. Oh, I've got a brilliant idea. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. So we clearly see where Abraham went wrong, getting impatient and taking matters into his own hands. We often don't clearly see as our own shortcomings. Sometimes when things get difficult, we forget who it is that we serve and his promises towards us. Forget that he's actually sovereign over all the events of the world. He knows exactly where we're at, and he's involved. You are my servant Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend. You whom I took from the ends of the earth and called from its father's corner, saying to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you and not cast off. Fear not, I am with you, do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. If there's somebody down the street saying, don't worry, I'll help you out, mate. Brilliant, that's all fine and wonderful, isn't it? But this is the creator of all things, who is sovereign over all things, who can lift people up and put them down, who can turn a barren land into a beautiful oasis, can turn a beautiful oasis into a wasteland. And he says, I'll help you. I'll be with you. Abraham's life was not a smooth, easy ride without challenges. It's not like Yehovah didn't test him, is it? When we read the account in Scripture, we sometimes get the impression that Yehovah was always meeting with Abraham and reassuring him, like every 5 minutes when well, that's not the case. What we see in the Scriptures is that years went by, and we'll have a look at the actual years between events later in the Parsha. Right. How long did Abraham, for example, have to wait for his promised son? 25 years. So we think, I just feel so lost. The Lord, I don't feel like he's spoke to me. That's like, hang on a minute. Look at Abraham. What of us when our lives are not smooth and easy rides? When things aren't going the way that we think that they should? Let's not forget who it is that we serve. Let's not forget who it is that watches over us. We come together as Yehovah's holy nation. We come together as Abraham's seed. We are blessed. So let's be full of thanksgiving today as we come to this parsha. Okay, and this is an abridged version of looking at Terah, Abraham's father. I looked at this last year, but it's very important to the whole story of Abraham. Terah is the last individual on the list of the descendants of Shem, Genesis 11. These are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abraham, Nahor, Haran, and Haran fathered Lot. And Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abraham and Nahor took wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Ishka. And there's a graphical representation of the family. Now, Sarai was barren, she had no child. So please make a note of that. Terah took Abraham his son and Lot the son of Haran his grandson and Sarai his daughter-in-law and his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. This is really important. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So he set off for Canaan, but he only got as far as Haran. And in the verses about each of the previous individuals, only one child is named, while the other offspring is simply referenced with the phrase, and he begat sons and daughters. In the case of Terah, however, all three of his sons are named, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran, without any reference to additional offspring, which already signals that his family is different. The impression is strengthened in the next verse, in which Terah and his family are reintroduced. Now this is the line of Terah. Terah begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran again. Each of these three sons are named and counted as his descendants. The details of Terah's family that are mentioned in this passage help provide context to a number of significant elements that will appear later in the story. The background on Haran explains why Abraham's nephew Lot is part of his travelling party, and the introduction of the family of Nahor and Milcah lays the groundwork for the story of finding a wife for Isaac. The disclosure of Sarah's barrenness foreshadows an important theme that runs throughout the lives of the first patriarch and matriarch. And when Abraham sought to find a wife for Isaac, he forbade his servant from choosing a wife from the native Canaanites and ordered him to go to his land and his kin to find an appropriate woman. So Abraham orders his servant to go to my land and my kindred, Genesis 24:4. And the servant represents Abraham's command to the family in Haran. We see that later in Genesis. Abraham does not explain, though, why a woman from his family is preferable to a native woman in the area. In truth, in thinking of the family marriage patterns, we can see there's a tendency within this family to marry its own members. In fact, the patriarchs and matriarchs are all actually descendants of Terah. If you take a moment and have a look, you can see. So the importance of Terah as the common ancestor of the chosen family is highlighted by the internal division in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is naturally divided into sections through the literary tool of headings. Each section begins with the phrase Ve'ela Toldot, and these are the generations. You can see the references there. The individuals whose lives are introduced by this heading include Adam, Noah, the sons of Noah, Terah, Isaac, Ishmael, Esau, and Yaakov. Interestingly, the one name that is left off the list that we'd expect to find is Abraham. The name that surprisingly appears is Terah. Since the section about the chosen family begins with Ve'ele Toldot Terah and is not interrupted with Ve'ele Toldot Abraham, Terah is marked as the ancestor on whom this story unfolds. So why should Terah be given such a privileged place in the narrative? He's implicated as serving other gods. We see that in Joshua. Joshua said unto all the people, Thus saith Yehovah, God of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood, the Nahar river in old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachor, and they served other gods. Throughout the story of Genesis, it is Abraham, not Terah, who merits Yehovah's blessings and receives Yehovah's covenant, and it is Abraham, not Terah, who is referenced by all subsequent generations, including his immediate successors, Isaac and Yaakov, as the father of their family. So why should Terah be given such a privileged place in the narrative? And hints from the text help us address the question. The first hint is that Terah left Ur of the Chaldeans to travel to Canaan. Although the narrative does not reveal Terah's motivations for this journey, perhaps could suggest that this physical journey reflects a shift in Terah's spiritual life journey. Interestingly, if one assumes that Terah in his lifetime began a spiritual journey to Yehovah, a couple of seeming ambiguities that appear later in the story are clarified. For example, the conversation between the servants of Abraham and the family of Nahor is more understandable. After the servants of Abraham reveals his identity to Rebekah, she runs home and tells her family, and her brother Lavan rushes outside and greets the stranger using the name of God. In Genesis 24, "O blessed of Yehovah, why do you stand outside?" The name of God is repeated twice more by Bethuel and Lavan after hearing the servants of Abraham repeat the story of finding Rebekah. Genesis 24 again, "Then Lavan and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from Yehovah. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Go and let her go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as Yehovah has spoken." The problematic elements of this story is the fact that it's this family in Haran not only knew the name of God but referred to it regularly in their conversations. They seem to know of Yehovah. So if we assume that Terah began the shift in the family towards Yehovah, then this also helps clarify why Abraham specifically wanted his son to marry into his family in Haran, as opposed to the idol worshippers of Canaan, as his family was distinct in their beliefs and practices. In addition, it provides greater context to the later encounter between Lavan and Yaakov, in which Lavan attempts to sanctify their agreement. Genesis 31, "The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us." So, yet Terah is not counted as the first of the patriarchs. What went wrong? After mentioning that Terah began a journey with the intent to reach Canaan, the story concludes with Terah stopping at Haran and not completing the journey. So, he goes to set off to Canaan, he ends up in Haran, and all his family have a knowledge of who Yehovah is, in fact talk about him in their conversations. But he stopped in Haran, Abraham didn't, and that's what differentiates Terah from his son Abraham. Abraham both heard the call of Yehovah and followed through in his commands. Ultimate recognition is reserved for the one who not only begins an important endeavor but also triumphs over great difficulties to see it through to its completion. It's Abraham, not Terah, who reached the promised land and who sanctified Yehovah's name throughout his travels. Consequently, it is Abraham, not Terah, who is acknowledged by the later generations as the first of the patriarchs. So Terah set off for Canaan, but what did he lack? Steadfastness and endurance. It's all very well starting well, what we see in 1 Corinthians 9. "I discipline my body and I keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified." Paul endured, he was not disqualified. 2 Timothy 4, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Hence, therefore, is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." So, maybe Terah set off from Ur with a heart set on following Yehovah. But why do you think he might have settled in Haran? Well, there's a connection between Ur and Haran, and it's the moon god seen. So there's Ur of the Chaldees. Means light, or the moon city, the birthplace of Haran, the principal commercial center of the country as well as the center of political power. It stood near the mouth of the Euphrates, and Ur was the port of Babylon, whence trade was carried on with distant countries. It was home to the famous temple of the moon god Sin, and it shared this honor, however, with another city, and this city was Haran. It was its twin city. Indeed, the temple of the moon god at Haran was perhaps even more famous in the Assyrian and Babylonian world than the temple of the moon god at Ur. At any rate, the two cities were bound together by the worship of the same deity, the closest and most enduring bond of union that existed in the ancient world. The Terah should have migrated from Ur to Haran, therefore ceases to be extraordinary. It was the most natural place for him to go. It was like passing from one court of a temple to another. So he's in this place, the worship of the moon god seen. And then he travels off to go to Canaan. This is a man whose family seem to be aware of who Yehovah is, but he doesn't make it to Canaan. He winds up in Haran, the twin city from where he came. So Terah seems to have started well, but couldn't shake the pull of false religion, the grip of Babylon pagan worship, and that which had become familiar and comfortable to him. he settles in Haran. It's just no big surprise, is it? Maybe he was tested and he failed to show himself to be true to Yehovah. Don't let that be you. If Yehovah has called you to follow him, then please don't only go so far and then settle for something less than what he is calling you to. He wants you to follow him and not some approximation of him that you've settled upon. And I know that it's on JP's heart to speak at some point during the Torah portions in Genesis about this whole idea that the Lord wants us to put away foreign gods, i.e., that includes these misconceptions that we carry with us of who he is, that we've grown comfortable with, that we don't want to let go of, that we've got some tie towards. And this seems to be, to me, what it's kind of represented here with this story with Terah. He set off and it was all great and marvelous, and then he comes to this place and it's all familiar and good, and he just, I kind of like this because I know this, and this is what I'm used to. But we're to be like Abraham. We're to leave behind all the nonsense. We're to follow Yehovah with all our hearts and not to settle for anything less than who he is, who he actually is, not who we've decided that he is based on some crazy assumptions or our past lives. Following means letting go of all the rubbish that you once ascribed to him. Getting to truly know him won't happen if you want to cling to that which is familiar yet false. Acts 7:2, he said, "Brethren and fathers, listen, the Elohim of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia before he dwelt in Haran." Abraham heard the call. He said to him, "I am Yehovah who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it." We know what Abraham did, but compare him with his father. Terah had decided when in Ur to go to Canaan. He started, but he failed to make it. Abraham was not so easily distracted. And so many are like Terah. And if you're somebody who has heard the truth, then don't go hanging on to all the rubbish that Yehovah has called you to leave behind. So many people with whom the truth resonates are okay acknowledging the truth, but when it comes to actually doing something about it, like letting go of people and places, they are terrible. So Terah does not have a heart that is 100% after Yehovah. Therefore, for Abraham to be blessed, we read this. And the Lord had said to Abraham, "Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee." Terah may well have had knowledge of Yehovah. He may well have been a lovely fellow, but Abraham was told to leave him. It can be difficult to disengage from what you have known, but if you want to be blessed by Yehovah, then you must see things as Yehovah sees them and recognize things for what they are. So the Lord said to Abraham, "Get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee." And there seems to be a theme in the parsha that suggests that it is only as Abraham says goodbye to those who do not figure in Yehovah's plan that Abraham is able to receive the full extent of the blessings that Yehovah has in store for him. Abraham is specifically told to leave his father's house, which was a big test for him. To leave his father's house while he was still alive would give the appearance of disrespect in them days. And Yeshua made a comment which seems to apply. "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." So the Lord said to him, "Get out of thy country and from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land I will show thee. And I'll make of thee a great nation, I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curses thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." And talking about all the rubbish we need to leave behind, it brings me to briefly mention the Schofield Reference Bible. The next slide shows the notes for these 3 verses and how they've grown as editions have been published. So 1909 we see these notes as very small. By 1967 we see these notes basically taking over this whole page. This is the Bible that is given us pre-tribulation rapture, eternal security. Israel of the Old Testament saved through a legalistic keeping of the law, while the church is saved by the work of Christ. Pits law against grace. State of Israel is fulfillment of prophecy and doctrine of dispensationalism. And a quick look at some of the footnotes that we see here. It says that God made an unconditional promise of blessings through Abraham's seed. And it talks about Abraham's descendants, and it singles them out as being the Jews. And here we have something that it says, the future will still more remarkably prove this principle. It says, it has invariably fared ill with the people who have persecuted the Jew, well with those who have protected him, and the future will still more remarkably prove this principle. So this isn't actually what is written in the text, but this is something that they've just thrown in. And people get comfortable with this, and people think, oh, this is what the Word of God is all about. But it isn't. The Lord has said unto Abraham, get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I'll make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Okay, get out and get away from all the rubbish that's holding you back. Get rid of all the nonsense. Get rid of it all. Come, follow me. Let go of all the rubbish, and it's the same call to us. All the rubbish, for example, that you see that's given out in things like the Schofield Reference Bible, that somehow we just can't, some people just can't seem to let go of, and it's still part of where they're at, and just let go of it all and just follow Jehovah. I will bless him that blesses you, and curse him that curses thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And please note, this is a great example of how all these notes, which all sound great and everything, are absolute nonsense, because the blessings here, declared in the Reference Bible as unconditional, are actually all conditional. Jehovah makes 8 separate promises to Abraham, all conditional upon Abraham going out. And there they are. I'll show you the land to which you go. I'll make you into a goy gadol. I will bless you. I'll make your name great. You'll become a source of blessing. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you. I'll engraft all nations and people groups of the earth into you. But people like the idea, don't they, of this unconditional promise, because then it's like, well, the Lord expects nothing of me. Is that the case, though? No. Please note that the calling of Abraham, the father of our faith, was a call to disentangle from all associations that coloured his way of thinking. And we're to do the same. Those who are of God hear the words of God. They are not interested in going after men's words. He left behind that which he knew. He removed himself, not knowing where he was going. As we read before, by faith he obeyed when he was called to go out of the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went, not even knowing where he was going, but he still went, because the Lord spoke and he just did it. He trusted Jehovah. He shemad. He didn't question Jehovah or hang about. He just did as Jehovah commanded. It's so simple. And yet so few people ever hear the words of God. He is known as the father of our faith because where others lacked, he was steadfast and he endured. So many like Terah come to a knowledge of Jehovah and yet cannot shake the pull of the false religion and that which is familiar and comfortable to them. Jeremiah 15, O Lord, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in the day of trouble. To you shall the nations come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited nothing but lies, worthless things in which there is no profit. And yet some people want to hold on to some of these lies. We're called to leave behind the lies of the forefathers and to put our trust in Jehovah. But it will cost you to follow the call. And Yeshua, every one of you does not take leave of all that he himself has is not able to be my disciple. Or not worthy to be my disciple in some translations. So Abraham departed as Jehovah had spoken to him, and Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abraham took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So please note, Sarah was barren at this point. Abraham doesn't know that one day she'll bear a child. Even though he was told to leave his kindred, he probably thinks his only chance of becoming a nation is through Lot and the rest of the group. But then Abraham passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the plain of the oak of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, unto thy seed will I give this land, and there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared to him. So Abraham now knows that the promise is for his seed. It must have been a remarkable thing for him to hear. He demonstrated faith, he left. And then the Lord speaks to him again, and that must have been a real moment for him. He removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. to call upon the name of the Lord, to pray to him and appeal to his character. And Abraham journeyed, going on still toward the south. And there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. So we could just pass over this by talking and talk about Abraham's lack of faith. But have a think about your situation. Jehovah has promised to bless Abraham. So he travels to Canaan as he was told to do. Then Abraham is confronted with a grievous famine. Not just a famine, a grievous one. A famine will be bad enough, but this is ridiculous. Can you imagine how he felt? What must he have thought? I've done what you said. What happened to the blessings? But we know how it ends for Abraham. We know that everything will be fine. We know Jehovah has his hand on him. We might even say, oh, he lacked faith, didn't he? Ask yourself, have you ever been dejected? Just like Abraham, you do not know how your life will unfurl. He didn't have a clue at the time. He just knows he did what the Lord said. And then there's this grievous famine. You know how it went for Abraham. And so you read about this grievous famine and it's not a big deal. You can look at it and go, it was a grievous famine, okay. Well, Jehovah knows how it goes for you. And whatever calamity it is that colours your story does not take away from the fact that you were blessed by the God of Abraham. And you're truly blessed. And perhaps one day you'll look back on your life and you'll see a grievous famine and go, oh, yeah, fine. But Lord, you are my friend if you do what I command you, if you listen to my voice, if you shema. If you shema, then you can be sure that the Lord of all creation considers you his friend. That's just incredible. Let it sink in. The Lord of all creation conducts all world affairs. The very Lord who would have brought about a grievous famine in the land of Canaan. He considers you to be his friend if you hearken to his voice. They that go down to the sea in ships that do business in great waters, these see the works of Jehovah and his wonders in the deep. For he commands and raises the stormy wind which lifts up the waves thereof. It is Jehovah who brings the stormy wind, just like he brought the famine. He is sovereign, and we can take comfort in that. They mount up to the heaven, they go down again to the depths, their soul is melted because of trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man, are at their wits' end. And then they cry to Jehovah in their trouble, and he brings them out of their distresses. He makes the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Then they are glad because they be quiet, so he brings them to the desired haven. Oh, that men would praise Jehovah for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. Let them exalt him also in the congregation of the people and praise him in the assembly of the elders. It is Jehovah who brings the stormy wind, and he can quiet it. He said unto them, where is your faith? And they being afraid wondered, saying one to another, what manner of man is this? For he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him. They hearken to his voice. All we need to do is the very same thing, and that is to hearken to his voice. Whoever is of God hears the word of God. I think it's incredible. Life can sometimes seem so complicated. And things come at you and it's like, oh, I couldn't have seen this coming. But for us as his people, it's simple. No matter what is going on, we just hearken to his voice. And then the master of all things looks on us as his people and he says, I will help you. It's all we have to remember to do is hearken to his voice. Our king is Yeshua, who stood on that boat and he said, be still. The wind and the waves just stilled. And he's our king and he calls us his friend. And he promises to be with us in all things. All we need to do is obey him. For I, Jehovah, your God, hold your right hand It is I who say to you, fear not, I am the one who helps you. The first and the last, the God of all creation, him who is sovereign over all things, is with his people. And Abraham called upon the name of the Lord, to call upon the name of Yehovah, to pray to him and appeal to his character. His word is his character. Stand on his word and call upon his name. Cast your burden upon Yehovah, he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. And it came to pass when he come near to enter into Egypt that he said unto Sarai his wife, behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. So she was probably roughly in her 60s at this point. That's quite remarkable, isn't it? Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So please say you're my sister, which is a half-truth. Sarah was Abraham's half-sister. Genesis 20, besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So Abraham's intent here was clearly to deceive, and he trusted in his deception to protect him instead of trusting in Yehovah. Not a good move. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abraham well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses and men servants and maid servants and she asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abraham's wife. And Pharaoh called Abraham and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou she is my sister? So I might have taken her to be my wife. Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. So Abraham went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the Negeb. That could have gone completely differently, couldn't it? Now Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. Well, it all sounds familiar. There was a famine, Egypt, Sarah representing the seed, Israel, taken by Pharaoh, plagues, and then Pharaoh ordering Yehovah's people to leave with great wealth. So Abraham is not exactly perfect. First, he did not fully follow Yehovah's instructions to go out from his father's family. He took his nephew Lot, his brother's son, with him, in direct disobedience to the instruction. And he shoots off to Egypt, where he was not only dishonest, but completely dishonoured his wife, endangered her purity, and subjected her to the lust of the Pharaoh and his harem attendants. It really could have ended terribly badly, couldn't it? But it didn't. Miraculously, Abraham and all that was his not only survived, but prospered. They may have been expelled from Egypt, but when they went out, they did not go empty-handed. They were sent out loaded down with riches and servants and great flocks and herds. Which brings us to this. Grace. It's an integral part of the Abrahamic covenant, not a New Testament innovation. Despite what the Schofield Bible might say, the issue from a Hebraic perspective is not law and grace. The issue is what is necessary to keep the covenant relationship vital, alive, and moving forward. Sometimes grace takes the form of forgiveness, other times discipline, other times supernatural intervention, other times, however, his grace takes the frightening form of hiding his face from us and appearing suddenly aloof and unapproachable towards us, because under the circumstance, that is what it takes to keep the relationship on course. It is about covenant perpetuation and fullness, not comfort, convenience, or happiness. It is about mission, purpose, and destiny, not sentimentality or indulgence. So in chapter 13, Abraham went up out of Egypt, and his wife and all that he had, and Lot was with him, went with him into the south. And Abraham was rich in cattle and silver and in gold. It really could have gone completely differently. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning betwixt Bethel and Hai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abraham called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abraham, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite then dwelled in the land. And Abraham said to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go the right. Or if thou depart to the right, then I will go to the left. He's given Lot the option, isn't he? Which makes me think of this. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. He didn't say, obviously I'll get to choose and you just go wherever I don't go. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and behold, all the plain of Jordan, that it is well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. And Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed from the east, and they separated from each other. Interesting that it mentions from the east, because the word in Hebrew has this suggestion of that which was from long ago and before, and it suggests that which is of Yehovah. Even though Abraham and Lot travelled together to and from Egypt, the impact of the visit on the two of them was different. Abraham returned to the land of promise, inspired with devotion for Yehovah, heading straight for Bethel to call out in God's name. And in contrast, Lot appears to have been impressed by the good life in Egypt, the bustling commerce, the extravagant wealth, the inviting tropical climate, and the mighty river that made it all possible. Even with faith in Yehovah, this man was not able to pull himself away from the world symbolized by Egypt. Now that Lot has left Abraham's camp, the Almighty is ready to bless Abraham again. As I say, this is a theme throughout the Parsha. So can we learn anything from it? And Abraham went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had with him, into the south. He was rich in cattle and silver and gold. Oh, I think we've already read that. He dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Lot made his choice purely based on what he could see with his eyes. He cares only for the material abundance for the land and cares nothing for how it will impact him and his family spiritually. As much as anything, faith means that we do not walk by what we see, but by what we know to be true in Yehovah. 2 Corinthians 5, we walk by faith, not by sight. Abraham was walking by faith, and Lot was walking only by sight. He pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. And it is only this far for now, but later Lot will actually become a leader of the sinful city. Valuing only the things that can be seen will increase his wealth temporarily, but he will lose it all. Of course, Lot thought, I can serve God as well as be here. They probably need a witness, but he was possibly deceiving himself. We must beware of our ability to deceive ourselves. Because the heart is deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it? The Lord said to Abraham after Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest to thee will I give unto thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. So now that Lot is gone, Yehovah reassures Abraham about his seed. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it to thee. And Abraham removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron. Mamre means vision, and Hebron means communion. Once again, Abraham is walking in Yehovah's vision for him and in communion with Yehovah. And there he built an altar to the Lord. So Abraham first had to leave his father, who held on to the traditions of the forefathers and didn't want to leave that which was comfortable to him. Terah only comes so far, only to settle for the familiar. Then Abraham had to part company with Lot, a man who, although he had faith, was far too interested in what the world had to offer. Abraham, the man of faith, is blessed each time he cuts ties with the places and people that do not share his passion for the Almighty, the Creator of all things, Yehovah. Ask yourself, have you left behind the lies inherited from your fathers, or like Terah do you cling to them? Have you parted ways with those who claim to be of the same faith as you? People who you enjoy having a relationship with, but people that ultimately you know are not on the same journey as you. And because of famine in the land would and did consolidate wealth and power, in the only area of the land that famine would not affect would be the well-watered and fertile Jordan Valley. Times of famine, mass migrations of people occur, and the economies of the river valleys flourish. The Eastern Empire couldn't resist. 4 kings from the east brought their armies to the Jordan River Valley to make war on the 5 city-states of the plain, where all the wealth of Canaan was accumulated. And Jehovah sent Abraham away where he would not even know that there was a war going on until it was over. 4 kings of the east win, and the 5 kings of the plain were forced to pay tribute, which went on for 12 years. And the 5 kings, the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, and the other cities of the plain, regathered their strength. There was a rebellion, but it didn't go well for the 5 kings, and they were heavily defeated. And we bring it up to verse 10. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there. And they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and they departed. And there came one that had escaped and told Abraham the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abraham. And when Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, he drew out his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and he pursued them unto Dan. He divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. So these folks were giants, by the way, so this is an incredible victory. Clearly, Jehovah was with Avram. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. So, Lot had followed his eyes and gone to live in a land full of wealth, and Abraham ended up with all the wealth. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him, and the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, and he said, "Blessed be Abraham by the Most High, possessor," and we looked at this last week, Kenar, which means to create or possess, of heaven and earth, as it's actually written in the Septuagint. Blessed be Abraham of God Most High, who made heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him tithes of all. If you want to know more about Melchizedek, then go to the YouTube channel playlists and you'll see this lot. There's about 5 hours worth of stuff on him. Also worth a watch, are we priests in the order of Melchizedek. The king of Sodom said unto Abraham, "Give me the persons and take thy goods to thyself." And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, "I lift up my hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, the creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldst say, I have made Abraham rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion." So, Abraham's come a long way. He's left behind the lies inherited from his forefathers. He's parted company with Lot, who incidentally, even after being rescued, decided to go back to Sodom rather than be shaken into a realization that perhaps he wasn't in the best place, both geographically and with Jehovah. He's also now refused the enticement of great wealth. He knows that Jehovah deserves all the glory, and his faith is such that he knows he has no need of what the world would offer him. He knows Jehovah is faithful, and he wants Jehovah to take all the credit for the blessings and the riches in his life. He has put his trust in Jehovah. So, we come to the word of Jehovah on this special set-apart day, the day that is blessed, the Sabbath. We come to read all about our ancestor whose life is documented in such a way as to instruct us in righteousness. For those who choose to walk in faith, we come together as Jehovah's holy nation, and we come together as Abraham's seed. Know then that it is those of faith who are the sons of Abraham. And what does faith come by? Hearing, and hearing by the word, shemaring, and shemaring by the word of God. Whoever is of God, he is the words of God. Because Abraham obeyed, shemad, my voice, and kept my charge and my commandments. From that word, akuo. He is related to shemad. Whoever is of God does exactly what Abraham did, and that is to shema. And the most remarkable thing about his life to me is the fact that when the Lord said to do something, he just did it. He didn't have a big discussion about it. He just did it. What about you? What about when things aren't going the way we think that they should? Do you turn to Yehovah? So many today professing to belong to him and to love him, yet they do not hear the word of Yehovah. We've seen what it is to hear the words of Yehovah. They claim to belong to Yeshua. They claim Abraham is their father, but they make a practice of transgressing the Torah. They are of their father, the devil. When they're presented with the majesty and glory of the one true God of Scripture, they do not turn to him. They fashion themselves idols and false gods. These are the things that we've been told to leave completely behind. They turn to their idols and they turn to each other, and everyone help his neighbor and says to his brother, be strong. I've seen people going after false gods. I've seen people going after their idea, their envisioned idea of who Yehovah is. They won't let go of the rubbish. They hold on to it fast. And then they're faced with the word of Yehovah. What do? They don't turn to Yehovah. They don't repent. They just hold fast their position. And they run to each other. And they say to each other, be strong. Whoever is of God hears the words of God. Do you hear the words of God? Have you responded to the commandment of the Master just as the wind and the waves did? Is your life a demonstration of the faith you profess? Do you obediently walk in his ways? Do you answer when called? Are you a good servant? Do you hear the word? Do you Shema? Are you of God? Are you Abraham's seed? If you're Abraham's seed, then when things aren't going the way you think they should, you know that you can put your trust in Yehovah. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. What an amazing promise. And later, for I, Yehovah, your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. Oh, that we would praise Yehovah for his goodness. Oh, that we would sacrifice the sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare his works with rejoicing. Amen. Oh.